I'm holding what I thought was a $50 million lottery ticket in my shaking hands. The numbers matched, every single one. I'd checked them 17 times, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Sarah!" I screamed up the stairs. "Sarah, we won!" My wife came running down, her face a perfect picture of shock and disbelief. Behind her, three of her closest friends, Jessica, Monica, and Kate, all gasped and started jumping up and down like we'd just scored the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. "Are you serious?" Sarah grabbed the ticket from me, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, Mike! Oh my God!" The next 4 hours were a blur of champagne, phone calls, and plans. Big plans. We were going to buy a house in the hills. Take that trip to Europe we'd been dreaming about for 10 years. Pay off every debt. Give our kids the college funds they deserved. But first, I had something I needed to do. I marched into my boss's office Monday morning with my chest puffed out like a rooster. For 8 years, I'd taken his verbal abuse, his impossible deadlines, his complete lack of respect for anything resembling work-life balance. "Jenkins," I said, not even bothering to knock. "I quit." He looked up from his computer, annoyed. "What are you talking about, Mike?" "You heard me. I'm done. Done with your micromanaging, done with your condescending attitude, done with this whole toxic hellhole you call a workplace." His face went red. "You can't just—" "Actually, I can. See? I don't need this job anymore. I don't need you or your pathetic salary or your power trips." I leaned over his desk. "I won the lottery, Jenkins. $50 million. So take this job and shove it." I walked out to applause from my coworkers. It felt like the greatest moment of my life. 2 days later, I found out it was all fake. The ticket, the win, the phone calls from lottery officials, even the local news segment that had interviewed us, all of it was an elaborate, cruel joke orchestrated by my wife and her friends. I discovered the truth in the worst possible way. I came home early from running errands, my head still spinning with dreams of our new life, and heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Not just any laughter, the kind that cuts through walls and straight into your soul. "I can't believe he actually quit his job." That was Jessica's voice. "The look on his face when he thought we won." Monica was practically wheezing. "God, he's so gullible." $50 million, Sarah said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "He really thought we were millionaires. How pathetic is that?" I stood frozen in my hallway, grocery bags still in my hands, as the woman I'd loved for 12 years called me pathetic for believing in a dream she'd helped create. What would you have done in that moment? Because I'll tell you what I did. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before this nightmare began. My name is Mike. I'm 34 years old, and for the past 12 years, I thought I was living the American dream. I met Sarah in college. She was studying marketing. I was in accounting. Not exactly the most exciting combination, but we clicked. She was ambitious, funny, and had this way of making me feel like I could conquer the world. We got married 2 years after graduation, bought a small house in the suburbs, and started building what I thought was a solid life together. I worked as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. The pay wasn't great, about $62,000 a year, but it was steady. Sarah landed a job at a financial services company, making slightly more than me, which I was genuinely proud of. We were a team, or so I thought. The cracks started showing about 3 years ago. Our credit card debt began creeping up. First it was a few thousand, then 10, then 20. Sarah said it was temporary, that her company was going through layoffs and she was stressed. She needed retail therapy, she said, new clothes for work, dinners out with her friends to decompress. Her friends, Jessica, Monica, and Kate. They'd all gone to college together, landed high-paying jobs in marketing and finance, and somehow managed to make me feel like the poor cousin at every gathering. They drove luxury cars, vacationed in Europe, and had this way of talking about money that made my steady but modest income seem insignificant. "Mike's so practical," Sarah would say when they'd suggest expensive restaurants or weekend getaways. "He keeps us grounded." Grounded. That was code for broke. I started picking up freelance accounting work on weekends, doing taxes for neighbors, bookkeeping for small businesses, anything to bring in extra cash. Sarah seemed increasingly distant, coming home later from work, spending more time on her phone, more time with her friends. "You work too much," she'd say when I'd be hunched over my laptop at 11 p.m., trying to finish a client's quarterly reports. "I'm doing this for us," I'd reply. Are you? Or are you doing it because you like feeling important? That stung. But I kept working, kept grinding, kept believing that if I just worked hard enough, saved enough, sacrificed enough, things would get better. The truth is, I was drowning. We were drowning. Our mortgage was behind 2 months. Credit cards were maxed out. I'd even borrowed money from my parents, something that made me feel like a failure every time I looked in the mirror. Sarah knew all of this. She saw me lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, running numbers in my head. She watched me skip meals to save money, saw me wear the same 3 dress shirts to work because I couldn't afford new ones. And knowing all of that, seeing my desperation, my exhaustion, my genuine fear about our future, she and her friends decided it would be funny to give me hope, to make me believe for just a few days that all our problems were solved. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, weren't they? Looking back, I have to admit, they were good, damn good. The level of planning and coordination required to pull off what they did was actually impressive, in the most twisted way possible. It started on a Thursday evening. Sarah came home from work with a lottery ticket, something she rarely did. We weren't gamblers, couldn't afford to be, but she said her coworker had given it to her as a joke gift for her birthday. Might as well dream big, right? She said, sticking it to our refrigerator with a magnet. The drawing was that Saturday night. I didn't think much about it until Sarah suggested we watch it together, which was unusual. We hadn't watched TV together in months. She was always on her phone or out with her friends. The numbers were drawn, 7, 14, 23, 31, 42, with a Powerball of 18. I glanced at our ticket on the fridge. Then I looked again. Then I grabbed it and checked it against the TV screen. Every single number matched. "Sarah," I whispered. "Sarah, look at this." What I didn't know was that Jessica worked at a local advertising agency. She had connections at the news station. Monica's boyfriend was a graphic designer who could create official-looking documents in his sleep. And Kate? Kate was an aspiring actress who could cry on command and had once done voice work for radio commercials. The phone call came Sunday morning. A woman with a professional voice claiming to be from the State Lottery Commission. "Mr. Thompson, this is Linda Walsh from the lottery office. We need to verify that you're the holder of the winning ticket from Saturday's drawing." She knew details about the ticket that only the real lottery office would know. She asked for the serial number on the back, which I read off nervously. She asked for my social security number and address to confirm my identity. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. You've won $50 million. $50 million. My legs gave out. I actually collapsed onto our kitchen floor while Sarah started screaming and crying. Within an hour, her friends had all mysteriously shown up to celebrate with us. The documentation came Monday morning. Official-looking certificates, claim forms, even a letter from the governor's office congratulating us on our win. Tuesday, a local news crew arrived to interview us for what they called a feel-good lottery winner segment. The reporter, who I now know was Kate's drama class friend, asked all the right questions. What were we going to do with the money? How did it feel to win? What advice did we have for other lottery players? I gave heartfelt answers about paying off debt, helping our families, maybe starting a college fund for kids we hadn't even had yet. Sarah stood beside me, holding my hand, beaming like the proudest wife in the world. But there were moments, small ones, where something felt off. The lottery official on the phone had a slight accent that seemed to come and go. The news camera looked older than what I'd seen other stations use. Sarah's friends were almost too excited, too ready with champagne and celebration plans. And Sarah herself seemed performative, like she was acting surprised instead of actually being surprised. But I wanted to believe so badly. We needed this win so desperately. Our credit cards were maxed, our savings account was empty, and I'd been losing sleep for months worrying about how we'd pay our bills. When someone throws you a life preserver while you're drowning, you don't question whether it's real. You just grab on and hold tight. I should have questioned it. I should have called the lottery office myself, should have demanded to see more official documentation, should have trusted my gut when it told me something wasn't right. Instead, I did what any desperate man would do. I believed in the miracle I needed most. The high of quitting my job was intoxicating. I'd dreamed about that moment for years. Walking into Jenkins' office and telling him exactly what I thought of his management style, his impossible deadlines, and his complete lack of basic human decency. But it wasn't just Jenkins. Oh no, I had 8 years of grievances to air. I stopped by accounting on my way out, where my coworker Dave sat hunched over a spreadsheet, looking as miserable as I'd felt just hours before. "Dave," I said, leaning against his cubicle wall. "You know you deserve better than this place, right?" He looked up, confused. "What are you talking about, Mike?" "I'm talking about the fact that you've been here 6 years and still make less than the new hires. I'm talking about the way they make you work weekends without overtime pay. I'm talking about the way Jenkins takes credit for your work." Dave's face went pale. "Mike, what's gotten into you?" "Freedom, buddy. Sweet, sweet freedom." I handed him a business card for a headhunter I'd researched years ago but never had the courage to call. "Use this. Trust me." I hit the elevator button and rode down to the lobby, feeling lighter than I had in years. The security guard nodded at me like he did every morning, not knowing he'd never see me again. Outside, I called Sarah from the parking lot. "I did it," I said. "I actually did it." "Oh my God, baby, I'm so proud of you." Her voice was full of excitement. "How do you feel?" "Like I can fly." I wasn't lying. The rush was incredible. "Want to go car shopping?" We spent that afternoon at 3 different dealerships. I test drove a BMW, a Mercedes, even a Tesla. Sarah kept taking pictures of us with the cars, posting them on social media with captions like, "When your life changes overnight," and "Dreams do come true." The comments poured in. Congratulations from friends, family members asking if the news was real, coworkers from my old job expressing shock and envy. "Mike won the lottery," Sarah posted on Facebook, with a picture of us holding our fake ticket. $50 million. Still can't believe it's real. 300 likes in the first hour. We didn't buy a car that day. The lottery officials had told us it would take a few weeks to process our claim and receive the first payment. But we made plans. Big plans. That evening, we went to the most expensive restaurant in town. The kind of place Sarah's friends always talked about, but we'd never been able to afford. I ordered the $40 ribeye without even looking at the price. Sarah got the lobster tail. We drank wine that cost more than our usual grocery budget. "To us," Sarah said, raising her glass. "To finally getting what we deserve." I should have paid attention to that phrase. What we deserve. Not what we've been blessed with, or what we're grateful for. What we deserve. Like the universe owed us this windfall. Like I deserved to be rich just for working hard and staying loyal. Looking back, I realized that dinner was probably the moment Sarah's guilt should have kicked in. Watching me savor every bite of that expensive steak, seeing the pure joy on my face as I talked about our future play, and knowing that none of it was real. How do you sit across from someone you claim to love and watch them dream about a life you know they'll never have? But she didn't break. She played along, nodding and smiling and adding her own ideas to our fantasy future. "Maybe we should get a vacation home," she suggested. "Somewhere by the beach." "Absolutely," I agreed. "And we'll invite your parents, my parents, everyone. Finally be able to give back to the people who helped us get here." Her smile faltered for just a second, just long enough for me to notice. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, it's overwhelming, you know. All of this." I reached across the table and took her hand. "We'll figure it out together. We always do." She squeezed my hand and nodded, but her eyes looked strange, distant. 3 days later, I understood why. I came home from the bank on Wednesday afternoon with my head spinning. The loan officer had been confused when I'd asked about pre-approval for a larger mortgage, saying there was no record of any lottery winnings associated with my Social Security number. Sometimes it takes a few days to update in the system, I'd told myself. These things take time. But doubt was creeping in like cold air through a cracked window. I parked in our driveway and noticed Jessica's car, Monica's SUV, and Kate's sedan all lined up on our street. Sarah hadn't mentioned having people over, but her friends dropped by unannounced all the time. I walked through our front door and heard laughter coming from the kitchen, not the warm, happy laughter of celebration. This was different, sharper, meaner. I set my keys down quietly and moved toward the sound. "I can't believe he actually quit his job." Jessica's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Did you see him at that restaurant?" Monica was giggling. "Ordering the most expensive thing on the menu like he was me kind of big shot. The look on his face when he thought we won, Kate chimed in. God, he looked like a kid on Christmas morning. My blood turned to ice. I almost felt bad when he started talking about helping our parents, Sarah said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. Like, how sweet is that? He actually thought we were going to be millionaires. Sweet? Jessica snorted. More like pathetic. Who believes they won $50 million without even checking with the actual lottery office? Mike does, apparently, Monica said. God, he's so gullible. Remember when you convinced him that expensive face cream actually worked? He still thinks that's why your skin looks good instead of the Botox. They all burst into laughter. I stood frozen in my hallway, grocery bags cutting into my palms, as the woman I'd loved for 12 years and trusted with my life called me gullible and pathetic to her friends. How much longer are we going to keep this up? Kate asked. Just a few more days, Sarah replied. I want to see if he'll make any other big decisions. Maybe he'll buy something expensive we can't return. You're evil, Jessica said, but she was laughing. Absolutely evil. It's just a joke, Sarah said, but her tone was defensive. He'll laugh about it eventually. Maybe it'll teach him not to be so naive about everything. A joke. 12 years of marriage, 8 years of financial struggle, months of me working 16-hour days trying to keep us afloat, and this was a joke to her. I walked into the kitchen. The laughter died instantly. 4 faces turned toward me, and I watched Sarah's expression change from amusement to shock to something that looked almost like fear. Mike, she said, standing up quickly. You're home early. Yeah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I am. Jessica, Monica, and Kate suddenly found their phones very interesting. The silence stretched between, in US, like a chasm. How long? I asked. How long what? Sarah's voice was higher than usual. How long have you been planning this joke? The word joke came out like poison. She looked at her friends, then back at me. Mike, I can explain. How? Long. Her shoulders sagged. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. While I was losing sleep over our bills, while I was taking on extra work, while I was genuinely terrified about our financial future, she was planning to trick me into believing all our problems were solved. The lottery ticket was fake, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes. The phone call was fake. Yes. The news interview was fake. Yes. I looked at her friends, who were all suddenly very interested in their drinks. And you all knew. None of them answered. I quit my job, I said quietly. Mike, you can probably get it back if you just explain. I quit my job, I screamed, louder than I'd ever screamed in my life. Sarah jumped back. I told my boss exactly what I thought of him. I burned every bridge I had at that company. For a joke. It wasn't supposed to go that far, Sarah said, tears starting to form in her eyes. We didn't think you'd actually quit. What did you think would happen? What was the end game here, Sarah? She didn't answer. Were you going to tell me before I tried to claim the money? Or were you going to let me walk into the lottery office and humiliate myself in front of strangers too? We would have told you, she whispered. When? I don't know. I stared at this woman I thought I knew. This person I'd built my entire adult life around and realized I was looking at a stranger. Get out, I said to her friends. They didn't need to be told twice. Jessica, Monica, and Kate grabbed their purses and practically ran for the door, leaving Sarah and me alone in our kitchen. Mike, please, she said. I know you're upset, but... Upset? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, I'm not upset. I'm devastated. I'm humiliated. I'm betrayed by the one person in this world I trusted completely. It was just supposed to be funny. Funny to who? To you and your friends who think I'm some pathetic loser who deserves to be mocked? I don't think you're a loser. Really? Because that's exactly what you called me 5 minutes ago. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. You know what the worst part is? I said. It's not that you tricked me. It's that you enjoyed it. And that's when I knew our marriage was over. The next morning, I woke up on our couch with a crick in my neck and the crushing weight of reality settling over me like a lead blanket. No job, no money, no lottery winnings, and a wife who thought my desperation was entertainment. Sarah had locked herself in our bedroom the night before, crying loudly enough for me to hear through the door. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 12 years, wanted to comfort her. But a bigger part of me, the part that was learning what betrayal actually felt like, couldn't bring myself to care about her tears. She'd cried after orchestrating my humiliation. Not during, after. My phone had been buzzing all night with notifications, Facebook comments, text messages, voicemails from friends and family who'd seen Sarah's posts about our lottery win. My brother had called 6 times. My mother had left a voicemail saying she was so proud and asking if we needed help spending all that money. I had to tell them all it was fake. I had to explain to everyone we knew that my wife had tricked me into believing we'd won $50 million, that I'd quit my job over a lie, and that I was actually more broke and desperate than I'd ever been. Sarah came downstairs around noon, her eye was red and puffy. She'd put on makeup to try to hide the fact that she'd been crying, but I could still tell. "Mike," she started, "we need to talk. I think we said everything we needed to say last night. Please, just hear me out." I was sitting at our kitchen table, staring at a pile of unpaid bills that seemed to mock me from across the room. "Fine, talk." She sat down across from me, wrapping her hands around a coffee mug like it was a lifeline. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," she said quietly. "It was just... We were talking about how stressed you've been, how worried about money, and Jessica suggested we do something to cheer you up. By lying to me, by giving you a few days of feeling like we'd made it, like all your hard work had paid off." She wiped her nose with a tissue. "We thought you'd be happy for a little while, and then when we told you the truth, you'd realize that things aren't as bad as you think they are." I stared at her. "Sarah, we're 2 months behind on our mortgage. Our credit cards are maxed out. I've been working 70-hour weeks just to keep us from going under. How is any of that not as bad as I think? I know money's tight, but tight?" I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "Tight. We're broke, Sarah. We're completely, utterly broke. And instead of helping me figure out how to fix it, you decided to play games with my emotions. It was just supposed to be for a few days. Days where you watched me quit my job. Days where you let me make plans and dream about a future you knew was impossible." My voice was getting louder with each word. "Days where you and your friends laughed about how pathetic and gullible your husband is." She flinched. "I never said you were pathetic." "I heard you, Sarah. I heard exactly what you said." The fight went out of her then. Her shoulders slumped and she put her head in her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't get my job back. Maybe if you explain to Mr. Jenkins what happened." "What am I supposed to tell him? That my wife played a prank on me that made me think I was rich? That I quit in a moment of fake confidence?" I laughed bitterly. "Even if he'd consider taking me back, do you have any idea how humiliating that would be?" She didn't answer. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, sitting back down. "I actually defended you to myself. When I heard you laughing with your friends, part of me thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this really was just a harmless joke that got out of hand. No, it wasn't. Because a harmless joke doesn't involve letting someone make life-changing decisions based on a lie. A harmless joke doesn't involve mocking someone behind their back. A harmless joke doesn't destroy someone's trust in the person they love most." Sarah was crying again, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her, no desire to make things better. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Tell me how to fix this." "I don't think you can." The silence that followed felt like a funeral. For our marriage, for our future, for the man I used to be before I learned that the person I trusted most in the world saw me as a joke. That afternoon I started making calls. To my brother, to explain why I wouldn't actually be able to help with his kids' college funds. To my parents, to tell them there was no lottery money, and ask if I could borrow more to cover our mortgage. To former clients, to see if any of them needed freelance work. Each conversation was a fresh humiliation. Each person I had to tell the truth to was another reminder of how completely Sarah had destroyed my dignity. By evening, I'd made a decision. I was going to find out exactly who my wife really was, because the woman who would orchestrate this level of cruelty and call it a joke was not the woman I'd married. And I had a feeling this lottery prank was just the tip of the iceberg. Have you ever had the moment where you realize you don't actually know the person you've been living with? Where little things that never made sense suddenly click into place like pieces of a puzzle you didn't know you were solving. That's what happened to me over the next few days. I started small. While Sarah was at work, yes, she still had her job, unlike me, I began going through our shared computer, ostensibly looking for financial documents to figure out our exact debt situation, but really searching for any other evidence of deception. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Hidden in a folder labeled work stuff were screenshots. Dozens of them. Screenshots of text conversations between Sarah and her friends, going back months. The first one was from 3 months ago. Sarah, Mike's been so stressed about money lately. It's honestly getting annoying. Jessica, just tell him to get a better job, LOL. Sarah, right? Like I make more than him and I don't complain about our bills constantly. Monica, maybe stop buying so much stuff. Sarah, or maybe he could stop being such a pessimist about everything. I stared at that conversation for a long time. While I'd been losing sleep over our finances, Sarah had been complaining to her friends about my pessimism and calling my concern for our mounting debt annoying. But it got worse. From 2 months ago. Kate, how's the husband? Sarah, same as always, working himself to death and acting like we're about to be homeless. Jessica, are you guys actually in trouble or is he just dramatic? Sarah, we're fine. Like, yeah, we have some credit card debt, but everyone does. He just freaks out over everything. Monica, must be exhausting. Sarah, so exhausting. Sometimes I wish I could. We'll just show him what real problems look like. Real problems. Our $28,000 in credit card debt and overdue mortgage payments weren't real problems to her. I kept scrolling. From 1 month ago. Sarah, Mike's talking about picking up more freelance work on weekends. Kate, doesn't he already work like 60 hours a week? Sarah, yeah, but apparently we need the money. Jessica, LOL, the air quotes. Sarah, I swear he thinks we're poor or something. Meanwhile, I just bought those Jimmy Choo boots I wanted. Monica, those were like $600. Sarah, worth every penny. Mike doesn't need to know the exact price though. My hands were shaking as I read that. $600 on boots while I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch to save money. But the conversation that made my blood boil was from 3 weeks ago, right before the lottery prank. Jessica, you should totally mess with Mike about the money thing. Sarah, what do you mean? Jessica, like convince him you guys won the lottery or something. See how he reacts. Kate, OMG, that would be hilarious. Monica, do it. It would be so funny to see him think he's rich. Sarah, that's so mean though. Jessica, it's not mean, it's a prank. Besides, maybe it'll show him that your financial situation isn't actually that dire. Sarah, I don't know. Kate, come on, it'll be harmless, just for like a day or two. Monica, we could totally help you set it up. Sarah, okay, fine, but just for a couple days. Jessica, yes, this is going to be so good. I had to walk away from the computer. My chest felt tight like I couldn't breathe properly. They'd planned this for weeks, not days, weeks, and Sarah had been reluctant at first, which somehow made it worse, because it meant she knew it was wrong, and did it anyway. But I wasn't done searching. In her email drafts, I found messages she'd never sent, complaints about me to her friends that were even crueler than the ones she'd actually sent. In her browser history, I discovered she'd been looking at apartments, 1-bedroom places across town that she could afford on her salary alone. She'd been planning to leave me. The lottery prank wasn't just cruel entertainment. It was her way of creating a reason to end our marriage. Make me look unstable, unreliable, someone who made rash decisions and couldn't be trusted with money. But the discovery that broke me wasn't about the prank at all. It was a folder of photos on her phone that she'd forgotten to delete from our shared iCloud account. Photos of her with a man I didn't recognize. Intimate photos. Photos from a hotel room, from restaurants I'd never been to, from weekend trips she'd told me were girls' weekends with Jessica, Monica, and Kate. The timestamps went back 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of her coming home to me after being with someone else. 8 months of me working myself into the ground to provide for a woman who'd already checked out of our marriage. The man in the photos was wearing expensive clothes, driving a luxury car, taking her to 5-star restaurants. Everything I couldn't give her, he could. His name was David, and according to his LinkedIn profile, he was a senior partner at a law firm downtown, married with 2 kids. I printed everything, every screenshot, every email draft, every photo. I organized it all into a neat folder labeled evidence, because that's what it was. Evidence that my marriage had been a lie. Evidence that the woman I'd loved and trusted had been playing games with my heart for months. Evidence that I was about to become someone I'd never thought I could be. Someone who fought back. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I found it tasted pretty good hot too. I spent a week planning. A week of pretending everything was normal while I gathered more evidence and figured out the best way to make sure everyone who'd participated in my humiliation got exactly what they deserved. Sarah kept trying to work things out. She'd made us reservations at a nice restaurant to talk through our issues. She suggested couples counseling. She even offered to call my old boss herself to try to get my job back. All while she was still seeing David. I knew because I'd started tracking her phone. Not proud of it, but desperate times and all that. She was meeting him twice a week at a hotel downtown, telling me she was working late or having dinner with her friends. The friends who'd helped her humiliate me were still coming around, acting like nothing had happened. Jessica even had the nerve to ask how I was handling the job situation, with fake concern in her voice. "Oh, I'm handling it," I told her. "Don't worry about me." I started with David's wife. Her name was Patricia, and according to her Facebook profile, she was a kindergarten teacher who volunteered at animal shelters and posted pictures of her kids' soccer games. She deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. I created an anonymous email account and sent her everything. Photos of David with Sarah, hotel receipts I'd found in Sarah's purse, even screenshots of text messages where Sarah bragged to her friends about her lawyer boyfriend who spoiled her like she deserved. Then I called David's law firm. "Hi, I'd like to speak to someone about one of your partner's conduct," I told the receptionist. It turns out that law firms take a very dim view of married partners having affairs with clients' wives, especially when those affairs involve expensive gifts that could be seen as conflicts of interest. David wasn't just cheating on his wife, he was potentially violating professional ethics by spending firm money on his mistress. I didn't have to lie or exaggerate. I just presented the facts and let them draw their own conclusions. Next, I dealt with Sarah's job. Remember, she worked in financial services, an industry built on trust, reliability, and ethical behavior. An industry that doesn't look kindly on employees who orchestrate elaborate financial fraud, even if it's just a prank. I documented everything about the lottery scam, the fake lottery ticket, the forged documents, the staged news interview. I showed how Sarah had used her connections in the financial industry to create convincing paperwork that could have been used to defraud banks or creditors. Then I sent it all to her company's compliance department. "I'm reporting a potential fraud case involving one of your employees," I wrote. "While this appears to have been conducted as a personal prank, it demonstrates a concerning willingness to create false financial documents and manipulate others through deceptive practices. I believe this warrants investigation given the trust your clients place in your organization." But I wasn't done with Sarah's friends. Jessica's advertising agency had a strict social media policy. Employees weren't supposed to engage in activities that could bring negative attention to the company. So I made sure her boss saw the Facebook posts where she bragged about the hilarious prank they'd pulled on Sarah's gullible husband. Monica worked for a nonprofit that helped families in financial crisis. I thought her board of directors might be interested to know that she'd participated in psychologically torturing someone who was actually experiencing the kind of financial desperation their organization existed to address. Kate was the hardest to hit professionally since she was between acting jobs, but she'd been doing some work as a substitute teacher. School districts tend to frown on employees who participate in elaborate deception schemes, even as jokes. I sent everything to the district's HR department with a note. "I wanted to make you aware of concerning behavior by one of your substitute teachers that suggests poor judgment and potential integrity issues." The responses came swift and brutal. David's wife filed for divorce within 48 hours. His law firm put him on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Sarah's company suspended her immediately and launched their own inquiry into her conduct. Jessica got called into her boss's office for a serious conversation about professional boundaries. Monica's nonprofit asked her to resign rather than face termination. Kate was removed from the district's substitute teacher list. But the piece de resistance was what I did with the evidence of Sarah's affair. I didn't just send it to David's wife. I sent it to Sarah's parents, her siblings, and every single one of her coworkers. I posted it on the neighborhood social media group where she'd been bragging about our fake lottery win. "Hi everyone," I wrote. "Some of you may have seen my wife Sarah's posts about us winning the lottery. I wanted to clarify that this was actually an elaborate prank she and her friends orchestrated to humiliate me into quitting my job. I also wanted you to know that while I was working 70-hour weeks trying to keep us financially afloat, Sarah was having an affair with a married man and mocking my financial concerns to her friends. I thought you should know the kind of person she really is." I attached everything. Every screenshot, every photo, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Within hours, Sarah's phone was ringing nonstop. Her mother called, crying. Her boss called, furious. Her friends called, panicking about their own situations. And Sarah? Sarah came home that evening to find her bags packed and sitting by the front door. "We need to talk," she said, her face pale and her hands shaking. "No," I replied calmly. "We really don't. Mike, please. I know you're angry, but this has gone too far." "Has it?" "Because I think it's gone exactly as far as it needed to." She started crying then, real tears this time, not the perform. A type of crying from before, but the desperate tears of someone whose entire life had just collapsed. "You've destroyed everything," she sobbed. "No," I said, opening the front door for her. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone else knew what you'd done." She left that night, and I haven't seen her since. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop near my new apartment, scrolling through job listings on my laptop, when someone tapped me on the shoulder. Mike Thompson?" I looked up to see Dave, my old coworker from the accounting firm, the one I'd given the headhunter's card to on my way out. "Dave, hey, how are you?" "I'm great, actually. I wanted to thank you." He sat down across from me. "That business card you gave me? I called the headhunter, interviewed with 3 companies, and landed a job making 40% more than what Jenkins was paying me." "That's fantastic." "Yeah, and get this, Jenkins had to hire 2 people to replace me, and they're both making more than I was." He grinned. Turns out I was way more valuable than he let me believe. Sound familiar? My own job situation had taken a while to resolve. True to form, Jenkins had refused to take me back, even when I'd swallowed my pride and called to ask. But that rejection turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to me. Instead of crawling back to a job that had been slowly killing my soul, I'd started my own accounting practice. It was scary at first, working from home, finding clients, building a reputation from scratch. But within 3 months, I was making more money than I'd ever made at the firm. Turns out, when you're not spending 8 hours a day in a toxic work environment, you have a lot more energy for building the life you actually want. The divorce proceedings were ugly but straightforward. Sarah had tried to claim that I'd destroyed her career and reputation over a harmless prank, but her lawyer quickly realized that arguing her case meant admitting to fraud, adultery, and emotional abuse. She settled for taking her personal belongings and her car. I kept the house, which I was finally able to afford on my own with my new income. David's law firm had fired him after their investigation revealed multiple ethical violations. His wife had taken him for everything in their divorce, and last I heard, he was working for a small firm making a fraction of his previous salary. Sarah's friends had all faced their own consequences. Jessica had been demoted at her agency. Monica had struggled to find new work after word spread about her involvement in the prank. Kate had given up on teaching and moved back in with her parents. But the most satisfying update came from Sarah herself. She'd tried to get a new job in financial services, but word had spread throughout the industry about her conduct. Companies don't want to hire people who create fake financial documents, even as jokes. She'd eventually found work as a receptionist at a small insurance office, making less than half what she'd made before. Her relationship with David had imploded the moment their affair became public. Turns out he was only interested in her when she was someone else's wife. Once she was available, he'd moved on to his next conquest. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall exactly. but I felt a deep sense of justice. She'd spent months treating me like I was worthless, like my feelings and our marriage meant nothing to her. Now she was experiencing what it felt like to have your life fall apart because of someone else's actions. The difference was, her life fell apart because of her own choices. Mine had fallen apart because of her betrayal. As for me, I was thriving. My business was growing. I'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment in a nice part of town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I'd earned it honestly. I'd started working out again, something I'd stopped doing years ago when I was too exhausted from overwork and stress. I'd even started dating. Her name was Lisa, and she was everything Sarah wasn't. She was a nurse who worked with terminal cancer patients, someone who understood real problems and had perspective on what actually mattered in life. She was kind, genuine, and when she said she cared about me, I believed her. Not because I was naive, but because her actions matched her words. She didn't mock me to her friends. She didn't play games with my emotions. She didn't see my vulnerabilities as opportunities for entertainment. She saw them as opportunities for love. You know what the strangest part is? I told her one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment. What's that? I'm actually grateful it happened. She looked at me, surprised. Really? If Sarah hadn't pulled that prank, I never would have discovered who she really was. I would have stayed in that toxic marriage, stayed at that soul-crushing job, and slowly lost myself trying to make someone else happy. So, in a weird way, she did you a favor. The biggest favor anyone's ever done me. I smiled. She showed me that I deserved better, even if that wasn't her intention. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, and I thought about how different my life looked now compared to a year ago. A year ago, I was desperate, exhausted, and married to someone who saw me as a joke. Now, I was successful, confident, and with someone who saw me as a partner. The man who'd believed in a fake lottery ticket was gone. In his place was someone who knew his own worth and wouldn't accept anything less than he deserved. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having your worst fears come true. Because once you survive them, you realize you're stronger than you ever imagined. 1 year to the day after Sarah's lottery prank, I got a text message from an unknown number. Mike, it's Sarah. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been thinking about what happened between us. Can we meet for coffee? I'd like to apologize properly. I showed the message to Lisa, who was cooking dinner in the kitchen of my new house. Yes, I'd bought a house. A nice one, with a home office for my growing accounting practice and a garden Lisa loved tending on weekends. What do you think? I asked her. I think, she said, not looking up from the stove, that you already know what you want to do. She was right. I did know. I met Sarah at the same coffee shop where Dave had thanked me for changing his life. The irony wasn't lost on me. She looked different, tired, older somehow, like the past year had aged her more than it should have. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. You look good, she said when I sat down across from her. I feel good. I heard about your business and the house. I'm happy for you. I studied her face, looking for signs of sarcasm or hidden agenda, but found none. She seemed genuinely sincere. I also heard you're seeing someone, she continued. Lisa, right? Yes. She seems nice, from what I've heard. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before Sarah cleared her throat. I wanted to apologize, she said, for everything. The prank, the affair, the way I treated you during our marriage. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know that I understand how wrong I was. What changed? I asked. Losing everything. She gave a bitter laugh. Turns out when your life falls apart, you get a lot of time to think about how you got there. And what did you figure out? That I was selfish and cruel, and that I took the best thing in my life and destroyed it because I was too immature to appreciate what I had. She looked down at her hands. I was talking to my therapist about it. Yes, I'm in therapy now. And she asked me why I thought it was okay to treat you the way I did. And I realized it was because I didn't respect you. Why? Because you were stable, reliable. You weren't exciting or dangerous or unpredictable. You were just good. And I thought that made you boring. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I thought I deserved someone more exciting than a guy who worried about paying bills and worked hard to take care of his family. I thought David was better than you because he could afford expensive restaurants and weekend trips. And now? Now I know that stability isn't boring, it's rare, and kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. She looked up at me. I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to, but I wanted you to know that losing you taught me what love actually looks like. I sat there for a long moment, processing what she'd said. A year ago, this conversation would have destroyed me. The idea that my wife had left me because I was too stable would have sent me into a spiral of self-doubt and inadequacy. But now I felt nothing but pity for her. I forgive you, I said quietly. She looked shocked. You do? I do. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger about it was only hurting me. I leaned back in my chair. You were right about one thing. I am stable and reliable. But you were wrong about that being a bad thing. I know that now. Lisa appreciates those qualities in me. She doesn't see them as boring. She sees them as comforting. She doesn't want someone who's going to play games with her emotions or disappear when things get tough. She wants a partner. Sarah nodded, fresh tears in her eyes. I hope you find someone who makes you happy, I continued. But more than that, I hope you figure out how to be the kind of person who deserves happiness. I'm trying. Good. I stood up to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I said, I'm glad it happened too. Really? Really? If you hadn't shown me who you really were, I might have spent the rest of my life settling for someone who didn't value me. Instead, I found someone who does. I walked out of that coffee shop and never looked back. 6 months later, Lisa and I got engaged. Our wedding was small, intimate, and filled with people who genuinely cared about both of us. No games, no drama, no hidden agendas. Just love, honest and true. My business continued to grow. Dave joined me as a partner, and we hired 3 more accountants to handle our expanding client base. We specialized in helping small business owners and families manage their finances, people like the man I used to be, working hard and just trying to make ends meet. Sometimes clients would come to me in crisis, convinced their financial situation was hopeless. I'd help them create a plan, show them that they had more options than they realized, and watch their confidence return as they took control of their lives. How did you know it would work out? They'd ask. Because, I'd tell them, sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what you're really worth. If you're watching this and you're in a relationship where someone treats your feelings like a joke, where your concerns are dismissed as drama, where you're made to feel like you should be grateful for scraps of affection, listen to me. You deserve better. You deserve someone who sees your stability as strength, your kindness as a gift, and your love as precious. Don't wait for a fake lottery ticket to show you what you're worth. You're worth more than you know.